Hi, I'm Betty. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making rugelach. I know they're a Jewish cookie, but when I first started making these, the recipe I had simply called them apricot pastries, and they've been part of my Christmas cookie repertoire for more years than I care to remember. So here we go. The pastry I make is a sour cream pastry, and for it I'm going to use 2 cups of flour, a cup or a half pound of butter, and a half cup of sour cream that I've blended with an egg yolk. And I'm going to make the pastry in the food processor because it just goes so quickly. So in goes my flour, and I'll add my butter, which I have sliced in bits. Just toss that in. This is a great way to make any kind of pastry. You can make pie crust in here too. The secret is to just pulse it and don't let it run too long. So I'm going to use probably about 6 2 to 3 second pulses. All right, if you can see, it still contains some sort of pea-sized lumps of butter, which is exactly what I want. Now I'm going to add the sour cream and egg yolk mixture. Scoop that right in there. And I'm going to give this a couple more pulses just to get it all mixed. I want to make sure I can still see those little lumps of butter. All right, now I'm going to turn this out onto a sheet of waxed paper. And Annie, as always, is most curious as to what is going on around here. This is still a very loose dough. And what we're going to do is simply knead it a little bit by hand. I'm going to get as much as I can onto the wax paper without messing up my counter. Scrape out these last little pieces. And just start kneading this a little bit. What I often do is use the wax paper to help make it stick together. Not terribly elegant, but it works. Now this is really starting to hold. For the final touch, I've turned this out onto the countertop just to make sure I've got a nice blended dough. Now what I'm going to do is flatten that somewhat into a disc. And I can still see some nice little pieces of butter in there. That's what's going to give us a nice flaky crust. So I'm going to get another piece of wax paper and wrap this up. All right, my dough is ready to be wrapped up and go into the refrigerator for several hours or even overnight. You want it nice and chilled before you roll it out. So here it goes for its rest. All right, my dough has been chilled well, and I've cut it into 4 pieces, and taking one piece and just sort of flattening out a bit on a piece of wax paper, which I will top with another sheet, and I'm going to roll this into about a 10-inch circle. Give it a little start here with my pin. And just keep going until it's approximately 10 inches. Don't worry too much if the edges are not exactly an even circle, because in the final shaping you'll see that it doesn't matter. And I don't know if you can see through the wax paper, but you can see all these little light streaks are the little pieces of butter, which are flattening out now and will make layers, which will make our pastry flaky. I've got my 10-inch circle, and as I said, you don't have to worry if the edges are exactly perfect, because it won't matter in the final product. So I'm going to take this and put it in the refrigerator to chill it again while I roll out the remaining 3 pieces of pastry. I've removed the first circle of dough that I rolled and re-chilled while I was rolling out the others. And now I'm going to peel off the wax paper. And what I'm going to do next is flip it over and peel it off on the other side. This is already starting to soften a little from the lights. When you're peeling this paper, don't pull it up like this. Pull it like this. This is a trick I learned years ago from a surgeon, believe it or not, when he was removing a bandage. Pulling it this way provides the least amount of resistance. So I'm going to take about 2 tablespoons of strained apricot jam, and I'm going to spread this using an offset spatula. Now you're going to think I'm being really stingy with the jam. But if I use much more of this, when I bake these, all that's going to happen is it'll ooze out and just go all over my cookie sheet and be wasted. So 2 tablespoons is about all that this can handle. And once I've got this spread fairly evenly, and you can see it does cover. There we go. I'm going to sprinkle this with a tablespoon or so of very finely chopped pecans. A little more. And now I've got some coconut. This is regular sweetened flaked coconut, but I did whiz it in the processor because I wanted finer flakes. I didn't want those long shreds the way it comes in the package. So just give it a little whiz and you'll chop it up. Just like so. Now I'm going to use a pastry wheel and cut this like a pie into 12 sections. And we'll see how this rolls up. If it has become too soft, simply pop it back into the refrigerator until it's easy to work with. There, that's all cut, and I'll get my cookie sheet and we'll roll these up. All right, to shape these, just take one of your wedges and roll it fairly tightly like this. I'm going to roll this. This is sanding sugar, which is a little coarser than normal granulated sugar. But if you can't find sanding sugar, granulated will work just fine. When I put them on the cookie sheet, I'm going to bend the ends in a little. And I'll just continue with the rest of these. Okay, these are going nicely. For a variation on these, I'm using slightly different filling ingredients. I'm going to use raspberry jam, some finely chopped walnuts, some mini chocolate chips. If you can't find those, just chop up some chocolate very finely, and again, some coconut. So the procedure is exactly the same. About 2 tablespoons of jam. This is strained raspberry jam. And again, just spread this with the spatula. I should mention I have my oven preheating to 350 degrees, and these cookies bake for about 20 minutes until they're a nice golden color. I know this looks skimpy, but again, using too much will only result in a big mess. And the extra jam won't be in your cookie at the end anyway. Just a nice thin layer to give a little flavor. So now, sprinkle this with a tablespoon or 2 of finely chopped walnuts, a few mini chocolate chips, raspberries and walnuts and chocolate and coconut. Doesn't that sound delicious? And a sprinkling of coconut. Just move these out of the way, and the exact same procedure. Cut these into 12. You can use a knife. I like a pastry cutter. It's just a little easier, I find. And into 12 pieces. And I'm going to follow the same procedure. Roll these, dip them in some sanding sugar, and put them on my cookie sheet. My apricot rugelach are ready to go in the oven. As I said before, at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. Set the timer. All right, our cookies are ready to come out of the oven. They're just a slight golden brown, which is just where we want them. And you can see, even with the little bit of jam that I used, it still oozes out, but that's fine. I'm going to transfer these over and put them on the stove to start cooling before I transfer them to a wire rack. Using a small spatula, I'm just going to transfer these over so that they will cool and be lovely and crisp. For further information and even more recipes, please visit my website.